What I am about to tell you, I have hesitated to say publicly for years, not because I did not know it. I knew it. I have known it for a long time. I hesitated because I was not sure the world was ready to hear it. I am no longer sure the world has time to wait. Something has shifted in the spiritual realm. Something dark, something ancient, something that has been building beneath the surface of your daily life, beneath your news feed, beneath your family dinners, beneath the walls of your own church. And most people have absolutely no idea it is happening. I am not here to frighten you. Fear is not what I want from you. But I am going to ask you to sit down, to be quiet, and to listen very carefully, because what I am about to reveal may be the most important thing you hear this year. I have spent decades as an exorcist, as a priest, as a theologian trained in the tradition of the church. I have sat across from entities whose names I will not say aloud in casual conversation. I have been in rooms where evil was not a metaphor. It was present, visible, pressing. And through all of that, I have learned certain things about the enemy, about his strategies, about the times we are living in, that I believe every Christian, every human being must understand before it is too late. The darkest message I have ever carried is this: the enemy is no longer hiding. He has stopped pretending. And if you do not understand what that means right now, you are already behind. Stay with me. All 6 parts. This is not entertainment. This is a warning issued in love, and in the gravest spiritual seriousness I have ever spoken with in my life. Let me begin with something that might surprise you coming from a priest. I am not going to start with theology. I am going to start with observation. Because the greatest spiritual crisis of our age is not that people believe in the wrong things. It is that people have stopped observing reality at all. Look around you. Truly look, not at the headlines. Headlines are engineered to confuse. Look at the patterns. Look at what is being normalized. Look at what your children are being told is beautiful, what they are being told is progress. What they are being told is liberation. And then ask yourself a very simple question. In what direction does all of this lead? I have been doing exorcisms for a long time. In the early years of my ministry in this area, there was a certain consistency to the cases I encountered. Possession, oppression, infestation. These things followed recognizable patterns. The entry points were similar: occult involvement, grave sin, generational wounds, rejection of God. The cases were serious, but they were, in a strange way, contained. Something has changed in recent years. The nature of the cases has shifted. What I am seeing now, and I am not the only exorcist saying this, I want to be clear, what we are seeing now is a breadth of spiritual attack that is unprecedented in the experience of those currently working in this ministry. It is no longer isolated individuals falling into dangerous spiritual territory. It is a cultural drift, an entire civilization being slowly turned away from its source of protection, from God, from the sacraments, from the natural moral law, from the family. And the spiritual vacuum this creates is not going unnoticed by the enemy. Evil does not create vacuums. It fills them. And right now, the vacuums are enormous. I want to be very precise about what I mean when I say the enemy has stopped hiding. In the earlier part of the 20th century, Satan's strategy, and yes, he has a strategy. He is an extraordinarily intelligent being. His strategy was largely one of concealment. Get people to stop believing in him. Get the culture to treat the demonic as superstition, as medieval backwardness, or as the projection of pre-scientific minds. That was the great deception. Make yourself invisible, and you can work without resistance. That strategy served him well for decades. The number of priests trained in exorcism collapsed. The theological formation on spiritual warfare in seminaries nearly vanished. An entire generation of Catholics, of Christians broadly, grew up with no functional understanding of the demonic, no practical relationship with the sacramentals, no idea how to spiritually protect their home, their family, themselves, but that phase appears to be ending. Not because the enemy repented, obviously, but because concealment is no longer necessary. The infrastructure of spiritual protection has been so thoroughly dismantled that the demonic can now operate more openly. When you remove the antibodies from a body, the infection does not need to be subtle anymore. What is being celebrated in public culture today? The inversion of the sacred, the mockery of the holy, the ritualization of what the church has always called sin. This is not merely cultural drift. It has a spiritual architect. I say this not to point fingers at any individual person. People swept up in these movements are, most of them, genuinely deceived. They believe they are pursuing freedom, pursuing love, pursuing justice. That is precisely how the enemy works. He offers counterfeits. He takes real human longings for connection, for meaning, for liberation from suffering, and he offers false answers that lead step by step further from God. But here is what I need you to understand in this first part. The fact that people are deceived does not mean there is no deceiver. The fact that the darkness is spreading does not mean it is spreading by accident. There is intelligence behind this. There is intention. And that intelligence is ancient. It is powerful. And it is deeply familiar with human weakness in ways that should make every one of us deeply sober. The enemy has stopped hiding. The signs are everywhere for those with eyes trained to see them. My task in this message, and it is why I have finally decided to speak this openly, is to help you train your eyes. Because you cannot fight what you cannot see. And you cannot protect what you do not understand is under attack. In the parts that follow, I am going to take you through exactly what is being attacked, why it is being attacked, and most importantly, what you must do about it. This is not hopeless. I want to be very clear about that. The church has faced dark hours before. She has always emerged. But she has never emerged through passivity. She has always emerged through saints, through people who woke up, who took the faith seriously, who fought. And we need those people right now. We need you to be one of them. In every exorcism I have conducted, in every case of serious spiritual warfare I have been involved with, a pattern emerges. The demonic does not attack randomly. It is not chaotic in the way popular imagination depicts it. It is calculated, it is methodical, and it always goes after the same three things first: the intellect, the will, and the affections. Why these three? Because these are the three faculties of the human soul that orient a person toward God. Corrupt the intellect, and a person can no longer see truth clearly. Corrupt the will, and a person can no longer choose the good consistently. Corrupt the affections, what the tradition sometimes calls the appetite, and a person can no longer love rightly. You take those three things, and you have effectively severed the person from their capacity to turn back to God without extraordinary grace. Now, here is the terrifying part, and I use that word deliberately because I think we have become too comfortable, too cushioned from the appropriate gravity of our situation. The culture we are living in is engaged in a systematic assault on all three of these faculties simultaneously, not by accident. With extraordinary efficiency, let us take the intellect first. The intellect is ordered toward truth. The human mind, when functioning properly, seeks reality. It wants to know what is actually there, what actually works, what is actually good. The demonic strategy against the intellect is not to make people stupid. It is to make them relativistic. If you can convince a person that truth is subjective, that your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth, you have not just confused them, you have disarmed them. A person who does not believe in objective truth cannot recognize a lie. and a person who cannot recognize a lie is the perfect target. Relativism is not a philosophy. In the spiritual order, it is a weapon, and it has been deployed against Western civilization with devastating effectiveness for the last 60 years. Consider what has happened to the concept of reality in our culture. We now have serious mainstream debate, not fringe debate, mainstream debate about whether biological sex is real, whether the unborn are persons, whether there is such a thing as objective moral wrong. These are not new questions philosophically, but the fact that they have re-emerged as genuinely contested in the public square is a sign of how deeply the intellectual faculty of the culture has been attacked. Move to the will. The will is ordered toward the good. It is the faculty by which we choose. Now, the demonic does not destroy the will immediately. That would be too obvious. It weakens it. It habituates it toward lesser goods, toward immediate gratification, toward the path of least resistance. And it does this through something the tradition calls acedia, a kind of spiritual laziness, a torpor of the soul, a state in which a person knows they should do something and simply does not. What does modern culture produce in mass quantities? Distraction, comfort, frictionless entertainment, instant gratification on demand. Every single thing the digital age has normalized, the doom scrolling, the binge watching, the constant stimulation, trains the will to be weak. It habituates human beings to the avoidance of discomfort, the avoidance of effort, the avoidance of the very things that form virtue. And virtue, the strength of the will oriented toward the good, is precisely what spiritual warfare requires. You cannot fight a spiritual battle with a will that has been trained for 17 years by screens, comfort, and instant gratification. The enemy knows this. He designed the environment and then the affections. What we love, what we desire, what moves us. The affections are ordered toward beauty, not merely aesthetic beauty, but the beauty of the true and the good. The affections, rightly ordered, lead a person toward God, toward virtue, toward authentic love of neighbor. Disordered affections lead toward the self, toward the counterfeit, toward what the tradition calls concupiscence. What is the cultural project of the last several decades, if not the systematic disordering of the affections? The sexualization of everything. The normalization of lust as love. The collapse of the concept of sacrifice in relationships. The replacement of commitment with feeling so that when the feeling changes, the commitment is considered over. This is not liberation. This is the destruction of the capacity for authentic love. And a culture that cannot love authentically is a culture that has lost its primary image of God, because God is love. These three attacks on the intellect, the will, and the affections are not happening in isolation. They are happening simultaneously. They are reinforcing each other, and they are happening to your children right now through the devices in their pockets and the curricula in their schools and the content streaming through your television. This is the battlefield. And most families are not even aware they are on it. I do not say this to create despair. The grace of God is more powerful than any of this. But grace builds on nature. It does not bypass it. If we do not understand what is being dismantled, we will not know what needs to be rebuilt. In the next part, I am going to tell you about what I believe is the single most dangerous spiritual development of our age. Something that very few people are talking about, that I believe is already inside most of our homes. Everything I have described to this point. The three targets, the portals, the cultural assault, would be cause for despair if the church were empty-handed. She is not. She has never been empty-handed. When the tragedy of our age is not that the weapons do not exist, it is that we have forgotten we have them. The arsenal is full. The soldiers have laid down their arms. Let me tell you about the weapons. I am going to be concrete, because this is too important to be vague about. The first and greatest weapon is the Eucharist. I do not mean attending Mass occasionally. I do not mean going through the motions of a religious obligation. I mean the Eucharist, understood as what the Church actually teaches it, is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. Real presence. When you receive the Eucharist worthily, in a state of grace, with genuine faith and proper disposition, you are receiving God Himself into your body. That is the most powerful spiritual event that can occur in a human life. And it can occur every single day. If you understood what the Eucharist actually is, if you genuinely believed it, you would not miss a single day that it was available to you. And the enemy knows this, which is why one of his primary targets for the last 60 years has been the belief in the real presence. Surveys consistently show that the majority of people who identify as Catholic do not believe in the real presence. This is not a statistical curiosity. It is a catastrophe, because a church full of people receiving the Eucharist without faith in what they are receiving is a church that has surrendered its most powerful weapon while believing it is still armed. We are firing blanks and wondering why nothing changes. The second weapon is confession, the sacrament of penance. I want to say something about this that I hope will cut through. Well, confession is not a psychological exercise. It is not talking to a priest about your feelings. It is the actual, real, supernatural forgiveness of sins through the authority given to the apostles by Christ Himself. Whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. When a soul receives absolution in confession, grace floods in, the enemy loses ground, and the spiritual immune system of the person is restored. I have seen people walk into a confessional carrying decades of guilt, shame, and spiritual darkness, and walk out changed. Not because they felt better psychologically, though that often happens too, but because something real occurred in the supernatural order. The chains were broken. The ground the enemy held was reclaimed. This is not metaphor. This is sacramental theology grounded in 2,000 years of the Church's understanding of how God works. If you have not been to confession in years, if there is grave sin in your life that has never been brought before God in that sacrament, do not finish this video and go back to your day as if nothing has changed. That is the most urgent thing you can do for yourself and your family right now. The third weapon is the sacramentals. And this is an area where I think enormous ignorance exists even among faithful Catholics. Holy water, the brown scapular, the rosary, blessed salt, exorcised oil, crucifixes, properly blessed. These are not superstitious objects. They are physical matter that has been set apart by the Church and through which grace operates. They create an environment of protection. They matter spiritually, not because the objects have power in themselves, but because the Church's blessing invokes the power of God over them and through them. I routinely ask people who come to me in distress about their homes, is there holy water in your home? Do you bless your children with it? Are there blessed crucifixes on the walls? Is there a blessed image of Our Lady? Is the rosary being prayed? The answers I get are almost universally no. And then these same people are surprised that darkness has moved in. You have left your house unguarded. You have sent your children out without armor. And you wonder why they are being hit. The fourth weapon is prayer. But I want to be precise about what kind. Not prayer as a vague spiritual feeling. Prayer as structured, regular, persistent conversation with God, the liturgy of the hours, the rosary, the divine mercy chaplet, Lectio Divina with Scripture. These are not arbitrary pious exercises. They are forms of prayer that the Church has refined over centuries precisely because they work. They orient the soul. They build the relationship with God that is the foundation of all spiritual protection. The fifth weapon, and this one is Perhaps the most underestimated is community. We were not designed to fight this battle alone. The family is the domestic church, and it is supposed to function as a spiritual unit. The parish is a community of souls supporting one another. When we are isolated, when we are fighting individually, when we have no spiritual friends, no accountability, no one praying with us and for us, we are extraordinarily vulnerable. The enemy knows this. This is why his strategy always involves isolation. I want you to hear me. The weapons exist. They work. They have always worked. But weapons sitting unused in an armory do not protect anyone. You have to pick them up. You have to learn how to use them. You have to commit to using them consistently, not just in crisis. In part 5, I am going to tell you what the next 12 months look like spiritually and why the time to act is not later. I want to be careful here. I am not a prophet. I do not receive private revelations, or if I do, I hold them with great caution and humility as the church instructs. What I am about to share is not prediction in the prophetic sense. It is analysis, the kind of analysis that comes from decades of working at the intersection of the spiritual and the practical, of watching the patterns, of understanding how demonic strategy unfolds when it is left unopposed. And the pattern I am seeing says this: we are approaching, perhaps already inside, a period of intensification, not the end. Well, I want to be clear, I am not making eschatological predictions, but a period of intensification of spiritual warfare, of cultural collapse, of pressure on Christian families and Christian institutions that is going to require a level of spiritual seriousness that most Christians currently do not have. The institutional structures that have imperfectly but genuinely served as supports for Christian life in the West, the schools, the hospitals, the charities, the cultural assumptions of a broadly Christian society are collapsing or being actively dismantled. What is replacing them is not neutral. What is replacing them is hostile. A Christian family that is not spiritually fortified, that does not have a genuine interior life, that is relying on ambient culture to transmit the faith, that family is not going to make it through what is coming with the faith intact. I am not saying this to be dramatic. Rarely here. I am saying it because I believe it is true, and I believe you deserve to hear the truth rather than reassuring nonsense. What does intensification look like in practical terms? Let me give you several dimensions. First, the pressure on children, the ideological formation happening in schools, and now through social media, which functions as an educational system outside parental control, is accelerating. The ideas being presented to your children as unchallengeable truth are in direct contradiction with Christian anthropology, with natural law, with the teaching of the church on who the human person is and what human flourishing looks like. And they are being presented with enormous emotional force, with social pressure, with the implicit message that anyone who disagrees is not just wrong, but morally deficient. Your children are going to face choices you may not have been prepared for, and they certainly have not been prepared for. The question is whether they have been formed deeply enough in the faith to withstand that pressure. Formation does not happen by accident. It happens through daily family prayer, through real conversations, through lived example, through a home that is genuinely different from the surrounding culture in its priorities and its practices. If the only difference between your home and a secular home is that you go to Mass on Sunday, your children are not formed. They are inoculated. There is a difference between inoculation and immunity, and right now we are producing a generation of Catholics who have been given just enough Christianity to be resistant to the real thing. Second, the pressure on marriage. The cultural understanding of marriage has shifted so profoundly, so rapidly, that even Catholics who would never consciously reject the Church's teaching have absorbed assumptions that are incompatible with it. The idea that a marriage should be primarily about personal fulfillment. The idea that children are optional rather than the natural fruit of conjugal love. The idea that when a marriage becomes difficult, not abusive, not pathological, just difficult, the appropriate response is to exit rather than to persevere and be transformed. These ideas are in the water. You absorb them without knowing it, and they are destroying marriages from the inside. Third, and this is the one that I think is most spiritually urgent, the pressure on truth itself. We are entering a moment in which the concept of objective truth is under assault in every domain simultaneously. And a people who do not believe in objective truth cannot hold a civilization together, cannot raise children with genuine morality, cannot resist manipulation, cannot be the salt and light that Christ called his disciples to be. The collapse of the concept of truth is the deepest crisis, and it requires a deep response, not just intellectual arguments, as valuable as those are, but a lived witness to the fact that truth exists, that it can be known, and that it is worth suffering, for none of this is hopeless. I want to say that again with great conviction. None of this is hopeless. The church has been in dark times before, the Arian crisis, the Protestant Reformation, the French Revolution, the totalitarianisms of the 20th century. She has always produced saints. She has always found renewal. But she has never done so by waiting for someone else to do the work, by hoping the culture would turn on its own, by the passivity of comfortable Christianity. She has done it through people who woke up, people who took the faith with radical seriousness, people who prayed when it was inconvenient, who sacrificed when it was costly, who spoke the truth when it was dangerous. That is what this moment requires. And in the final part, I am going to tell you exactly, practically, specifically, what you need to do starting today. I have brought you through 5 parts of what I believe is the most important message I have ever delivered publicly. I have told you that the enemy has stopped hiding. I have told you the 3 faculties he attacks first. I have told you about the portals that are already in your home. I have given you the weapons the church provides. I have told you what is coming. Now, I need to tell you what to do, practically, concretely. Starting today, the first thing, and I am going to say this as directly as I know how, is to get to confession. If you are a Catholic and you have not been to confession in months or years, that is the single most important thing you can do for yourself and your family right now. Not next month. This week. Go to your parish, find out when confession is available, and go. If there is grave sin in your life, and only you know what I mean by that, bring it. That is what the sacrament exists for. The grace that flows from a good confession is not a small thing. It is transformative. It removes the ground the enemy stands on in your soul. The second thing is to bless your home. Get holy water from a church properly blessed. Go through every room. Pray. Ask for the protection of Our Lady. Ask St. Michael for his intercession. Put blessed crucifixes on the walls. If you do not have a statue or image of Our Lady in your home, get one. These things are not decorations. They are declarations. They mark that home as belonging to God, and they matter in the spiritual order in ways that most of us have tragically underestimated. Your home is either a domestic church or it is a spiritual vacuum. There is no neutral ground, and a spiritual vacuum will be filled. The third thing is to establish family prayer. I do not mean a vague intention to pray more. I mean a specific daily structured practice. The rosary is the obvious starting point. It takes 15 minutes. It covers the mysteries of the faith. It invokes Our Lady's intercession. And she has always been the most powerful intercessor against the demonic in the history of the church. The rosary does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be emotionally satisfying every time. It has to be done consistently, daily, as a family. The fourth thing is to examine what is coming into your home through your screens. I am not saying eliminate all entertainment. I am saying introduce discernment. What are your children watching? What are they playing? What content is being placed in front of their imaginations for hours every day? This requires real engagement, real conversation, real parental involvement. It is not easy. It is necessary. The formation of the imagination is too important to outsource to streaming algorithms. The fifth thing, and this is perhaps the one people resist the most, is to build or find community. If you are isolated in your faith, find people who are not. Find a parish where the faith is being taken seriously. Find a prayer group, a study group, a community of families who share your commitments. If your current parish is not providing formation, do not simply abandon the sacraments. Find them where they are available. The community matters. We are fighting in a unit, not as individuals. A Christian who has no community is a soldier who has left formation. No matter how personally courageous they are far more vulnerable than they need to be. And the enemy knows who is isolated. The sixth thing is to learn the faith, not just the basics, the real depth of the tradition, the theology of the spiritual life, the teaching on prayer, the understanding of how grace works, the history of how the church has navigated darkness before. The faith is not a feeling. It is not a set of moral guidelines. It is a complete and extraordinarily rich account of reality of who God is, who we are, what went wrong, what was done to fix it, and how we are to live in the light of that. When you know it deeply, it sustains you in ways that surface-level religion never can. And the final thing, the one I want to close with, is this: do not be afraid. I know that almost everything I have said in this message could produce fear. That is not its purpose. Its purpose is to produce clarity, because fear paralyzes, clarity activates. And what we need right now, what the church needs, what your family needs, what the world desperately needs, is not more fear. There's more people who are clear-eyed about what is happening, who are equipped with the actual weapons that work, and who are willing to stand. The darkness is real. I have looked at it from a very close distance for a very long time. And I can tell you with absolute conviction from personal experience and from the unbroken testimony of the church across 20 centuries. The light is stronger. It has always been stronger. The gates of hell have not prevailed. They will not prevail. But they are pressing, and the people of God must press back. This is the darkest message I have delivered, not because the situation is hopeless, but because the situation is serious, and you deserve the truth. Now do something with it. Go to confession. Bless your home. Pray the rosary. Form your children. Find your people. Learn your faith. And do not be afraid. God is with us. He has always been with us. The question is whether we will be with Him, not in name only, not in cultural assumptions, but in the deep, serious, daily, costly, joyful reality of a life actually lived in His presence. That life is available to you right now, today. That is the only response equal to this moment. And I believe, with everything I have, that you are capable of it.